4 in 10 people believe in ghosts. Over a third of people believe intelligent life exists outside of Earth. 43% of people believe demons exist. There are unexplained phenomena happening daily around the globe, and we are here to talk about it. Your portal into UFOs, paranormal, cryptids, the supernatural, the mysterious, the unknown. I see you. This is Beyond the Radar, and this is your host, Humanoid Tom Conway.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Radar, ladies and gentlemen, your paranormal news program. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 on the Gulf Coast, hello down there, and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. Or, of course, streaming from the UPRN Facebook or YouTube page and Beyond the Radar's Facebook and YouTube page. We are also on Roku TV, and you can check out our archives there as well, or subscribe to Beyond the Radar's podcast on Spotify for past shows. And as always, interact with the show on Facebook, YouTube, or our free text line straight to me, 484-283-5328. That's 484-283-5328. Tonight, we have a wonderful show. We have a great guest that's going to be on with us a little bit later. Nathan King, a new author. I have a soft spot for new authors, as me being one as well. And it's going to be a wonderful interview about his book coming up, Awakening the Witch's Blood. It's going to be a wonderful show. First, some housekeeping. Oh, Nicole, hello. And it is your birthday. Happy birthday from us here at Beyond the Radar and UPRN to you, Nicole. Happy birthday. I hope it's a wonderful one. I hope you enjoy it, rest, get some wine, eat some food, whatever you want to do. And hang out and listen to us with a cool topic, cool guest, and everything in between, honestly. So, a little bit of housekeeping before we get to our guest. I wanted to send a heartfelt thank you to everybody who's reached out to me, gave positive reviews, supported my book, Healer. It is on at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Here's the book, Healer, The Conflict of a Gift. Everybody's been so nice with their kind words and purchases. Please continue. Hopefully we can get to bestseller status, and that would be all because of you. So I really appreciate every single thing that you guys have been doing for me. Another thing off the top of my head is Tanya. You guys remember Tanya was on a couple weeks ago about her carbon capture paint, or paint that was that can scrub the air for CO2 and help clean the air and allow more oxygen, because more oxygen, the better we feel, the better we are, and the healthier we are. She ended up hitting her Kickstarter campaign, largely in part to all of you and your generous donations. So I wanted to thank you, send a thank you from her. She had wanted me to thank everybody for her wonderful, support, and we will have her back on and keep an eye and tabs on that, because this is a product that can change the world. Who thought if paint could clean the air? But she found it out, and it's an absolutely wonderful, wonderful gift. And all of you, thank you so much to all the radio listeners down in Louisiana and the Gulf Coast, everybody online, everybody listening through, everybody watching on Roku. Hello to you special people out there. I've been tremendously thankful for everybody, and she is as well. One thing before we get into our guests too, a little story that made me laugh. It comes from the Star, and there's a paranormal expert. And if you don't know, the Star is a UK, the Daily Star. The Daily Star is a UK publication, and what they had talked about on there, what they had talked about was that the United Kingdom is running out of ghosts. Uh, the article says UK is running out of ghosts as old spirits are dying off. Now let's think about that for a second. Old spirits are dying off. I guess that means that they're crossing over because a spirit can't die off. I guess they are crossing over. And one thing that's very interesting to me is it's a little bit in contradiction to a wonderful psychic that I know, and she had told me that there's sort of an epidemic of souls not crossing over right now. Whether there's an increase in traumatic deaths, which is one of the reasons why traumatic deaths, a soul doesn't even know it's dead, which is heartbreaking. And I I can't believe that that is true, but it's hard to believe, but I'm sure it is. There is a lot more brutal deaths out there. There's a lot more horrible things that have happened. And hey Nicole, have you heard of Soul Eaters? Been watching this Indian YouTube? No, I have not heard of that. So please enlighten us whenever you can. But you know, one thing that she had taught me, June, is that people, essentially people, are able to cross everybody over, and they don't have to be a psychic or a medium to do that. So I'm going to add, Nicole, soul eaters are eating souls that are mainly lost. That's tragic. I hope that's not true. If that's true, that's so sad because individuals they need to go into the light. Hopefully they're not just lost to eternity. I would hate for that to happen. But, many of them are wayward souls, that many of them are wayward souls that don't know that they're dead, and that breaks my heart. So I'm just going to read a little bit of this, and how you can help cross souls over. The best thing to do when a loved one dies is to release them and tell them you are sad, but it is okay, and you are okay with them crossing over. Tell them after they have crossed over, they are then welcome to come back and visit if you are comfortable with that. Wish them well and Godspeed. Be happy for them when they get to head home, and that they will be there to help you when you are ready to cross over. So just that little bit right there allows people to, well, cross over. You know what I mean? Allows people to cross, and it gives them the blessing that, hey, I am sad because it is a traumatic experience. I've lost my father. I've lost many other people's. You have spirit guides that help you. You have spirit guides that you help cross over people. It's wonderful. And you can help them. Yes, exactly, Nicole. You ask your spirit guide to help cross spirits over because they want to know and they want to help you. You want to help them. You want to help them cross over. So I thought it was very interesting that it was considered an epidemic of souls not crossing over because traumatic deaths have increased over the past years. And it's just a different point of view. I'm not a psychic. I don't claim to be, but so when they talk to me and, I genuinely believe them and they say, there's a lot of souls that aren't crossing over. It's really sad. It really is. So that's the opener here for a little bit. And I see our guest has signed on down there. So we're going to hit a break and then we'll come back with Nathan King, new author. So everyone stick around. We'll be right back.
4 in 10 people believe in ghosts. Over a third of people believe intelligent life exists outside of Earth. 43% of you believe demons exist. We invite you to Beyond the Radar, your paranormal news show. If it's unexplained phenomena happening daily around the globe, we're talking about it. Exploring the unexplained, challenging the conventional, and diving deep into the shadows that lurk just beyond our perception. Come join the transmission on the United Public Radio Network. Once you come, you'll never be the same.
Meet Daniel Knight, a psychologist with an extraordinary gift to absorb and heal the deepest wounds of the mind. In the heart of a chilling investigation, every secret unraveled binds him closer to darkness. But as he delves into the psyche of a killer, his own demons emerge. Caught in a battle within and against an evil that seeks to exploit his powers, where the line between savior and victim blurs. Dare to heal the wounds of the mind. Healer. Read it today.
Do you want to reach millions with your product or service? Are you looking to connect with a diverse, intelligent, and engaged audience? Then look no further. Beyond the Radar radio show is your golden ticket to achieving just that. Our listeners are curious, open-minded, and always eager to learn. They value quality, authenticity, and innovation, just like your brand. With Beyond the Radar, your advertisement will be heard by millions of dedicated listeners. Our show covers a wide range of topics, attracting a diverse audience that could be your next loyal customers. So why wait? Take your brand to Beyond the Radar and into the hearts and minds of millions. Advertise with us. Let's explore the extraordinary together. Beyond the Radar radio show, where your brand meets a world of curious minds. Contact us today for advertising opportunities at www.beyondtheradarnews.com and fill out our contact form. We hope to talk to you soon.
Samantha survives a tragic accident thanks to Lucian, an enigmatic being. Her newfound abilities catch the attention of a secretive government agency. Drawn to Lucian despite the danger, Samantha is unaware of his true identity. She teams up with Lucian's brothers in a daring mission to rescue him. Accused unfairly, Lucian seeks refuge on his distant homeworld. Can Samantha prove Lucian's innocence and save their forbidden love? From the Sky by J.E. Nicasio. Available now. Get your copy on Amazon and BNN.
Have you ever looked up at the night sky and wondered what lies beyond? Have you ever felt a sense of curiosity about mysterious lights darting across the sky? If so, my UFO 101 Unveiling the Unknown course is just for you. This course is a comprehensive introduction into the fascinating world of unidentified flying objects and extraterrestrial life. It is designed for beginners, so no prior knowledge is required. I am your instructor, Tom. I am an author, podcast host, and seasoned researcher in the field ready to debunk common myths and misconceptions. So are you ready to embark on an exciting journey to unravel the secrets of the universe? Join us at UFO 101 Unveiling the Unknown, and let's explore the unknown together. Don't let this free opportunity fly away. Enroll now and start your journey into the intriguing world of UFOs and extraterrestrial life. All right, welcome back, everyone, to Beyond the Radar. So, we're going to get into our guest here real quick. Let me read his bio. Wonderful guest. And very nice. We were chatting here in the chat. You can't see it, but we can see it. Nathan King is a Michigan-based witch, occultist, psychic, high priest, Minos of the Minoan Brotherhood tradition. He spent a good deal of his magical life being trained in historic Salem, Massachusetts. Great place. Yes. We love that, don't we, America? He has been featured on Sci-Fi and Travel Channel during this time in Witch City and has worked at several shops and events in his field. Nathan is a practitioner of folkloric witchcraft and carries a deep passion for the spiritual contact and pagan spirituality as a living art form. Nathan is an active ritualist, workshop lecturer, and at several events throughout the Midwest, as well as being a theater enthusiast and animal lover. Nathan's debut book, Awakening the Witch Blood, will be released in late 2024. So stay tuned for that. And without further ado, here is Nathan. Nathan, hello. Welcome to Beyond the Radar.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I am very excited to be here.
Absolutely. No, thank you for being on. We absolutely love having guests. And your debut novel, I just released my debut novel in May. So I absolutely wanted to jump on this opportunity because I think you and I, at least over the last year, we've kind of had a lot of similar experiences without even knowing each other, being debut authors.
Absolutely. And it's definitely a huge journey, just stepping into the world of, putting together all of my research and all of the things, that I felt were important within this very it's a subject matter within witchcraft that is very, very niche, and witchcraft, even in of itself, is very niche in the world of the paranormal and occultism, to even make it even more broad. So I'm very excited for people to get their hands on this.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure it's going to do well. We have a lot of authors who have been on UPRN, and there's a reason why people and companies keep coming back to us is because we're talking right to your base, man. We're talking right to the fan base. So let's get into it. I've made a couple questions here, and don't worry, it's we're not, I don't want to scare you with that. But one thing I saw in your bio is the Minoan Brotherhood. Can you talk about that? How'd that come about?
Absolutely. So when my journey into witchcraft started, I was already practicing different forms of
Okay.
different, I was exposed to different traditions of witchcraft. And I knew that I wanted what is the broader term of traditional initiatory witchcraft. I wanted to go through the initiatory experience,
Mm-hmm.
and that the community aspect was important to me. Having a structure that has been tested time and true, because you can see who this thing has been passed to. All of those things were important to me, especially because as witches, we tend to deal with a lot of sifting through of what is good information, what is bad information. And so
Yes.
having a tradition that sort of has those safety mechanisms in place to sort of filter out that bad information, to try to just focus on the magic at hand, was important to me. And so my journey actually started within Gardnerian Wicca. And I, was in that time where I was like, I think there's something a little bit more tailored for me. And I found out about the Minoan Brotherhood. So the Minoan
Mm-hmm.
Brotherhood started in the New York City, Greenfield Village area. And it was started by a man named Eddie Basinski. And Eddie was a proud homosexual. And even in the 70s and in the 80s, witchcraft is very progressive, but you can't just erase things like homophobia out of an
Mm-hmm.
entire decade of practitioners. So
Mm-hmm.
homophobia is still something that Eddie was confronted with. And so he said, well, I'm going to create my own thing based off of all these other traditions that he had been exposed to. And he developed the Minoan Brotherhood, which is a tradition for gay and bisexual men. It is essentially from the mechanics of Gardnerian Wicca, but what we do is specific to the mysteries of men who love men, and all of the goddess and god components within that initiatory witchcraft context. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that's a thank you. I had no idea, but I've had other guests throughout my travels with similar type of brotherhoods and things like that. So that's why I wanted to ask that, because they all have their own story, and no story is the same, but they all are meaningful, and they're meaningful to the people who join them, obviously. But I think that's fantastic. And yeah, especially homophobia when it started. I mean, you said the time frame. It's right. It's right there. And when you talk about that, you often think about people who were ahead of their time, and how Eddie would be now if he were to start it now. What would you know what I mean? Like, would he have let lesser barriers to entry, whatever it might be? You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
I
And I
have a
also,
lot of respect.
to be devil's advocate, and from talking to a lot of, you know, elders who were involved in certain conversations, knew certain things, I think homophobia was definitely there. But I think what was even more in Eddie's case, and what was particular to Eddie, other than homophobia, was just the bureaucratic
Mhm.
politics that can happen
Yeah.
within small groups. And it doesn't matter if it's a troupe of actors backstage, or if it's a clique in high school. When
Yeah.
you forge these very magical or very personal relationships with small number of people, there's going to be some sort of conflict. And not for nothing, witchcraft as we practice it in the contemporary day and age, it's a fairly we're modern people figuring out how to adapt these old
Yeah.
systems. And so I think for Wicca specifically, this is a baby. We're still in the baby stages of growing and figuring out what to do. And Eddie was definitely caught in the crossfires, but definitely ahead of his time, because we're still having the same conversations that Eddie was raising in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah. I mean, it's so quick to, or life seems quick to change, but also not at the same time. You know what I mean? And you're still working on things that were being worked on in the 70s and 80s. We actually have a question. All right. From Nicole. To you, is magic the same now as it has been in the old days?
Are we ever the same?
Yeah,
So
no.
yeah, so no, our magic is different. I think the whole point of magic is change itself. Magic's
Yeah.
purpose is to evolve us as humanity, but also to get us ahead in life. And so magic is going to be different every time we use it. It's going to be different every time each generation uses it, because magic is
Yeah.
always going to be reworked in the image of the person or the people that are making it. Very similar to how, and I do get into sort of tracking this in the book, but you can see
Mhm.
a certain deity starting in a very local,
Mhm.
very, tiny, tiny village. And then that group talks to this group and they get inspired and they take that goddess and they
Yeah.
make her a little bit more distinct to them. And so you start to see these cultural evolutions of, for this example, a goddess who, starts off as a very small lake river goddess and then eventually becomes Diana.
Mhm. Wow, that a great way to explain that. Thank you. I really truly appreciate the time and you took to explain that one. That was really good. I saw also you being an occultist, right? Do you favor one area more than the other? Or are you
See,
equal opportunity?
yeah, that's a great question. And I love this question because for me, I make no distinction between being a witch and being an occultist. I think that
Okay.
if you are for me, witches
Mhm.
are inherently going to be occultists or should be occultists, because we should be exposing ourselves to as many different forms of hidden knowledge and different mystery schools to refine our craft, because it is a craft. And so
Mhm.
as a craft, it has room uh, for a bunch of different pieces. And I think the more we inform ourselves, the better we can use the tool that is witchcraft to expand and help our lives and others.
Absolutely. And you're right, it is a craft. I mean, it's even in the word at some points, witchcraft too. But I wanted to get in, talk about witchcraft. You went to, you learned in Witch 101 in this history of the United States and Salem and all of that. What did that mean to you in developing you as I guess a young witch into what you are, into how you became yourself today?
Yeah. So Salem and I have a very interesting relationship, because Salem is one of those things where it's amazing and it is hyper focused witchcraft all of the time, because it's a tourist town. And so as a
Mhm.
tourist town, what people need to realize, and I think this is on both ends, not just the people who work in the businesses and own the businesses, but also
Mhm.
people who come to partake of these businesses. But at the end of the day, these are businesses,
Yes.
and these are how people make their money. And so when you take something that is your belief and your practice and your spirituality, and then that becomes your job, that can become a very sticky
It's true.
thing. And so for me, it was very important to find and cultivate that balance. And I'm still, in that progress, but it takes a lot of focus and it takes a lot of effort to uh, be in that world, because the witch never leaves. It is witchcraft 24/7. And so
Mhm.
staying grounded can be a real issue for a lot of people who move there and don't know what to expect. But also, the thing that I didn't realize until after I moved to Salem was that I moved to Salem looking for the real witches, because I,
Mhm.
for whatever reason, didn't felt like I was finding the people within my own community, even though there were tons of practitioners that I was learning from in my community. And it wasn't until I got to somewhere I moved back where I was like, oh my gosh, we're everywhere. Um, and the spirit of Salem really exists in, I think, every local small town occult shop where people are really asking questions and people are really able to pass on, no matter how big or small, but just a piece of magic for someone to learn. Because that's why I think people come to Salem, other than just, the fascination with the tragedy of 1692, but even for the historian who comes and wants to look at 1692. The witch is an intrinsically magical, mysterious figure, and we're pulled and we're called to that. It was a period of history that only lasted about 6 months. So
Mhm.
that was a big misconception, is people think this lasts for years and years. We're talking about a very short time of
Yep.
history. And it was a perfect storm of a lot of different things going on in Salem in 1692 in order for those things to happen. So there are a lot of misconceptions and misunderstanding about what a witch meant to them and why we're using and reclaiming the word witch now.
Exactly. A lot of what you said is not too dissimilar from my path with this. You know what I mean? And what we're doing today and what we're doing now, because you know, am I doing? It takes a lot of maturity. You're right. That's a good word for it, because what you want to do and what you have to do for your business a lot of times are, I don't want to say opposites, but they're not the same. They're not the same. And you need to figure out if you want to do that, or am I going to bring this down to a hobby level and not something I'm going to actively pursue. And yeah, a lot of times, and I'm not claiming to be a historian or all that, but at least I knew that Salem wasn't not a long period of time at all. But the romanticizing of Salem, the history, the people that want to go back there, I don't I don't blame them for, you want to go and do that and all that. By all means, go ahead. But the day and age that we live in now, you don't have to be in Salem to practice that. Internet has made the world very small. Phones, you know what I mean? You name it. You can, like you said, they're everywhere, because you don't have to be there to learn it. You know what I mean? You can learn from home. And what Salem is, I think, will always be there because it's a representation of the idea of witches, and not so much of the whole foundation of it. It's the idea of it. The same
Exactly.
way, and I'm going to draw a parallel, the same way for many of my viewers who are UFO fanatics. If you start in a casual conversation, drop Area 51, you will hear true UFO people like me, and I'll be on this soapbox too. Say Area 51 is just a place that they keep open so people like you think there's aliens there. The real places are Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Nellis Air Force Base. They'll name you places where actual UFO craft have gone to, but you can keep thinking about Area 51, and that's great because this country loves distraction. They love doing something over here, but waving their hand over here, and that's a little spiel that I had with that one. But there's a lot of parallels how your upbringing was and to this, because sometimes you can rip your hair out because it's not, your first idea might not always be the right one. I guess that's the best way to put it in that regard. I'm going to hop over here, and we have a few texts on the text board. I'm going to read a couple before we get into your book. Okay. We have a Beverly in Pensacola. Hello, Beverly. Thank you for listening. Do you have a favorite ghost story, or anyone?
Ooh. So I write about in the book, actually, I
Okay.
feature one of my favorite ghost stories, and it's a local ghost story to my area and a spot that I grew up next to. But let me think of a recent one, because those sort of things are very much a part of my day-to-day existence. So I have actually a really good one recently. So I was
Okay.
so this was literally just told to me last week. So I have a lot of experience working with people who work in the death care industry. And
Yes.
so one of my colleagues works at a cemetery and was explaining how they were doing what is called a check document. And they were going out, checking the gravesite, and they kept feeling like something was pulling on
Ooh.
on her leg. And she kept
Uh-huh.
looking down, and all that was there was a flat marker. And she uncovered it and she dusted it off. And it was a person who died around the age of like 20, 21. So she went back inside and she flipped through the index that tells you who's who. And this person died a very tragic death, apparently. And
Mm.
immediately she knew, or she felt, she got the chills on the back of her neck, that
Yeah.
this person was not happy where they were laid to rest, or was not resting, as it were. And so she closed the file and ran back to the office and just turned on some gospel music, and that was that. And I just think that's a really, it's a small story, but I'm
Yeah.
surprised how many people have experiences with the paranormal. For me, that's an everyday sort of existence. But for other people, it will very much catch you off guard. It still catches me off guard, depending on what we're doing.
I agree. Some people's frequency is not at the level that they can interact with them. So sometimes this is just pure entertainment to people. And if you were to ask me, and I get on soapbox again, that's the difference between people experiencers and non-experiencers, or people who believe and people who don't believe. But that's for a different time or place. We also have May in Arkansas. Hello, May. Have you ever held a seance?
I have regularly.
Oh,
Actually,
cool.
when I was in Salem, that was something I would do as a fill-in psychic occasionally. And that's, I enjoy doing seances. I think seances are great. In mediumship, we refer to, the group, when a group gathers and you're doing a seance.
Mm-hmm.
That's really more what's called gallery reading, or
Okay.
and where you're reading a group, right? And so
Yes. Yeah.
there is risk there for doing some cold reading, where you ask very vague questions and deduce it down. For me, as a medium, I much prefer sitting down with an individual, so that way I can be very specific, because you'd be surprised how many things would come through. And a lot of times there are things that sometimes we are not super connected with until we think about it. And it's way after the fact we realize who it is and what they're talking about. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, May. Thank you. And real quick one from Nicole. Do you believe in curses, and how do you deal with them?
So I do write about this in the book, and
Oh.
absolutely believe in curses. And how do I deal with them? The same way that I deal with any practical life function, by keeping up with cleaning. So I do a lot of cleansing work,
Yes, yes.
and I have just like I keep my doors locked during the day when I'm not home. I have my protection magics that are always consistent, because there are just certain things that I want to always have that sort of build on. So I think if we're consistently cleansing and protecting ourselves, our homes, and our families, we're doing the necessary. We're setting up the necessary steps, and I really get into that. But how do you deal with them, right? Let's say that somebody has sent something your way. 9 times out of 10, when somebody is
Mhm.
thinking that they're under the influence of a curse, they're actually not, because it does take a lot of willpower and there's a lot of stuff going on.
Okay.
I think for people to be afflicted by said curse, a lot of the stuff is how you can tell is, what is your health doing? What are your dreams doing? Um, what does your sleep pattern look like? What does your
Mhm.
eating patterns look like? All of those things are good checkpoints, but always, go to somebody who specializes in divination and ask, is the power of the curse the fact that I believe in this? Because sometimes that
Oh,
in of
wow.
itself is the curse, and
Yeah.
that's what gives it power. So it's a slippery slope, but witches, we have the power to neutralize, and to protect. So as long as we do those things, we would never have to, I think, fling those things back. However, when we look at things like cursing, hexing, whatever you want to call it, these things are historically used by oppressed and marginalized people,
Mm.
because they are in trouble. This is their tactic. When we look at cursing and hexing and what it is, it's just an extreme measure of self-defense and protection magic. There's
Yeah.
a big difference between going after somebody because they have deliberately harmed somebody or something, or, you know, who knows what, versus just cursing this person because you have a problem with your ego or you don't have the full picture of something. And are you willing to risk the consequences of a curse? Because I'm not, I am not of the school of witchcraft that
Hmm.
subscribes to things like karma or the threefold law. These are things that kind of came after the original witchcraft developments and got
Hmm.
tossed around a lot in the 90s craze of witchcraft. But the thing that witches do believe in is cause and effect. Are you willing to accept the effects of what this thing is going to inflict? There's a cause and there's effect. Are you going to deal with that? Sometimes those ripples catch up with you, sometimes they don't. Are you willing to risk it?
Wow. I mean, that makes total sense to me. And I didn't even think about that point because we hear, especially, being a podcast and radio show host, I hear about hexes, curses, and things like that, but I never put it together that you have to be willing, is the juice worth the squeeze? I guess, you know what I mean? Like, are you willing to put your ass on the line because you felt wrong or you just, for whatever reason. But no, thank you for that. Yeah, they opened my eyes to that. So let's get into your book, all right? Let's get into your book. First off, what made you write Awakening the Witch Blood?
Great question. So Witchblood originally started off as a lecture workshop that I was doing around the
Oh,
Midwest.
yeah.
And it was never intended to be a book originally. I always tossed around the idea of writing a book, but that opportunity never really presented itself. It wasn't something I
Mhm.
was like, okay, I have to do this, even though it was something that I wanted to do, but I never thought I would ever write a book, right? And so this this concept of witch blood is something that exists in very traditional forms of witchcraft, and it's a mythopoetic terminology. And it also, in folklore, is going to refer to specific families that may have kept witchcraft specifically within the family, and we get these concepts of the hereditary witch. Um,
Mm.
but more alarmingly, in probably the past like 10 years, even within witchcraft, even within paganism, there have been a lot of groups making a lot of noise that witch blood is this thing that is this white nationalist, very supremacist
Oh.
thing. It's this very pure thing, and
Hmm.
that's not what this is at all. That's never what I think any of these old schools of thought were referring to when they were talking about witch blood, because witches are every shape, size, color from
That's
every
what I thought.
continent. It's everywhere, and so I really didn't want to allow any sort of racist, fascist person try to appropriate our
Yeah.
craft. And number two, I wanted to open up this conversation of like, if we have witch blood, and witch blood is something that is from gods, giants, angels, elves, fairies, we get into all of that, wherever it comes from, the source of magic that
Hmm.
touched with humanity in ancient times, at the dawn of humanity, quite possibly, because we don't know when we first accessed magic. But there's this universal creation mythology of humans having this very intense divine interaction or exchange with what I call the alien or extraterrestrial beings, and then boom, humans have consciousness.
Hmm.
And so this consciousness or this awakening is what a lot of witches were referring to with this idea of witch blood. But I think it really calls to the fact that if these original gods and spirits or fallen angels passed this essence to humanity all the way back in the beginning, humans have had a lot of sex. We've had a
Yeah.
lot of sex. And
Yeah.
so I think this is a magical ability that is quite possibly and very much is in all humanity. And that's a beautiful thing. And I think that opens up a lot of people to exploring their magic if they feel called to. Um, I also think, though, that it speaks to the fact that, okay, we have blood. Witchcraft is something that you do. This is something that's embodied.
Hmm.
So it was about getting the physicality of witchcraft in the practices that we do, and understanding that witchcraft is in the doing. It's not in the title. It's not in what you're reading, but it's in the actual practice. It's in, what you do that makes you a witch, not just the fact that you may have gone through an initiation, or you may have read a book, or your grandmother may have taught you something. None of that qualifies you unless you are
Yes.
practicing, engaging in this current. And I think any consistent practice will take you into this current. And there are a lot of witches who have found themselves to that magical circle in a myriad of different ways. And I think the witch blood is a universal concept that was a literary tool that allowed me to talk about all the things that I wanted to talk about, but also weave it with this red thread or red vein, as it were.
Excellent. Yeah, no, that's surprising that it would have that connotation with that, because I agreed with a lot of what you said there. Um, and I it does take the practice. It does. I've heard that, and you're not the first person who practices this that has told me that, and that I made in speaking with them, I made a connection because in my line, UFOs, paranormal, ghosts, that sort of realm. I often say I have to be more skeptical than the skeptics, because I have to weed out my own kind throwing things up there. And it sounds like you talked a little bit about that with if you're not practicing, you can't call yourself a witch. I read a book, so I automatically am. That's a dangerous thing to have. You have a part of your community that could do something, you know what I mean, harmful to the rest of you. And when you have a demographic or a realm that we're all under in terms of paranormal or supernatural, we don't have a lot of credibility in the first place. So we have to, you know what I mean? We have to make sure, we don't lose whatever trust we have.
Absolutely.
um, so you talked a little bit about things that, for my other questions that were in the book. What other personal experiences were inspirations for things that you put in the book?
Hmm. I mean, there's so many things. Let me just think about
Sure.
this for a minute, because I really drew upon the things in my practice that I think were crucial or core, that if somebody were to approach them, they would understand the overall sort of essence, or they would
Okay.
catch a glimpse at the spirit of what I was working with. And so they could take that hopefully for themselves. Um, so the personal stuff that I include, that stuff that gets really personal, is when I get into talking about ancestor veneration and working with the dead. Um,
Okay.
what does that look like? Why is that attributed and inherent to my witchcraft? And but to witches, as a whole, there is something about witches predominantly working with spirits. They don't necessarily have to work with deity.
Okay.
Historically, that is definitely more accurate, as working with deities was something more exclusive to the priesthoods, or to the mystery schools, or to the aristocracy. So you had to have money to access these divinities, versus you could work with spirits, you could work with saints, you could work with ghosts, as it were, or your
Hmm.
ancestors, if you were your common practitioner in historic times. And so, looking at ancestors, I wanted to really talk about, what does that look like for me, and who are the specific ancestors, that I could highlight. So I get into that a little bit. I also really wanted to tap into the source texts in witchcraft that I love the most, or that were most influential to the craft, not just for me, but like to the movement of witchcraft as it exists, as it came out in the 1930s and 50s. So have a whole chapter dedicated to Charles Leland's Gospel of Aradia. Um,
Oh.
and Aradia is a text that really, um, it's beautiful, and it's a very inspiring work, but it's got a lot of history behind it, and it's got this very interesting, complex history behind it. And looking at how it shaped what we know about witchcraft, to me, was just fascinating. So I'm really excited for people to take a look at that, but also to see how it relates with the witch blood in the first place.
Wow, it's so great and refreshing to talk to somebody who, rather than personal professional gain, which that's a part of it, but you really want to drive forward the mission and the traditions of witchcraft, and to put somebody in there, or to have a reader really get a better knowledge of it rather than just reading a story. And I truly appreciate that. That's what I did in mine. You write a story, but I want it to transcend the end of the page. I want them to continue to think after they are done. So it's really refreshing to meet somebody like that as well. I have another text question here. Bobby, Jasper, Texas. Thank you for listening down there. 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. What was your writing process for a paranormal book?
All right. Yeah. So that is the question of all questions, right?
Yeah.
The writing process, really, for me, it starts with having something very specific that I want to say.
Okay.
So, when you say you want to write a paranormal book, well, what within the paranormal do you want to
Yes.
write about? And
You can go
then,
anywhere.
right, and then you look at that thing that you want to write about, and then you make that even more specific, because I
Hmm.
think specificity will really help you find your voice as an author. It'll help you stay focused so you don't veer off into 20 different subjects, which is very easy to do, especially if you love the subject quite a lot. And when you write a book, don't write a book to try to prove yourself. Write a book to have something to say, and know that there's more paper for more books out there. So that for me was the biggest sort of lesson. So I started with bullet points, and I started with list making.
Oh, okay.
I've got some pretty serious Virgo in my chart, so lists help me out quite a bit. So make your lists, do your bullet points. Because I already had this set up as a lecture class, I had a slideshow presentation that went along with this class already made. So having that with all of the images that I incorporated as sort of a storyboard, if you will, going through my presentation
Hmm.
really, really helped. So think about, well, what if I were to do this as a talk? Or what if I were to do this in a different medium? What would that look like?
Hmm.
So you can have it as a snapshot, and then you can really go into it. One of the other things that I did with my process that proved super important in the process when I least expected it would,
Hmm.
was I started off by taking regular notebook, and
Yeah.
I just hand wrote everything. That way I'm not on
Oh,
the
great.
computer, and I'm not, this is the first draft I'm doing. So I'm not on the
Yeah.
computer. I'm not randomly searching a word or searching for more information about something. And then 2 hours later, I'm down a rabbit hole looking at, whatever. Um, but it also allowed me the freedom of,
Guilty.
right. But it gives you the freedom of, once all of that is drafted, you then have to type it. And so
Yeah.
then you really get some core editing done. And then you can go through it again. You can add, take away, refine your research. And then that third sort of nice, crisp draft is what I ended up handing in the publisher. But it's completely, up to you and what you are confident with. Because if anything, this work has taught me that you have to just lead with confidence, and it's your work. So you're the one who knows what you're talking about.
Yeah, I've been sucked down many rabbit holes in my day, and that's wonderful. I like, and I'm so glad that they asked that, because I do like hearing about that as an author. I started off as a script writer, so my process is a little bit based off of that, where I need to flush out every single character first in my fiction. You know what I mean? And I need to know what they're doing, where they're doing it, and a little bit to you, I do like using paper and pencil, because there's hitting a backspace button is not the same as, like, and you get rid of and you do
Right.
that. So I definitely like that.
Right? And if
Oh,
you're writing, and if you guys are writing like this, if you're writing nonfiction like this,
yeah,
it's you don't have that freedom with like character development and all those things that
yeah,
I love from being a poet and somebody. There's a lot of poetry in this book, so get
hmm
ready.
yeah,
So I liked that I got to, in the freedom in working with the publishers, I was allowed to show my creative writing side. I was allowed to show my
yeah.
poetry side. I was also allowed to show my chops as a historian. So
Excellent.
when you look at nonfiction, your historical characters are still characters. So
Hmm.
that research of getting inside who these people were, where they lived, was super important to me, because now it feels like I know not just the people I was
Yeah,
writing about, but they coincidentally are also the founders of a lot of the practices of my witchcraft. So I feel even closer to them in spiritual form. So it had this two-way benefit.
absolutely. And with your book being nonfiction, I've said this before. I'll say it right here that nonfiction writers have to be more creative than fiction writers because your story's already out there. How are you going to tell me it different? How are you going to tell me it that I is not the same thing? You know what I mean? Because a lot of subjects have been written about 70,000 times. You know what I mean? So you have to be creative in finding a way to do that.
Any beginner witchcraft book ever.
There you
There's
go.
so many of them. And here's the thing, there need to be a lot of them, and there need to be more of them. I'm all for beginner books uh, because I think when you're starting off and you're new, I think you need to be reading everything you can get your hands on. You need to be
True.
reading the good books. You need to be reading the bad books too.
Yes.
So you know what the bad books are. So you know what feels right, what doesn't feel right. So you can
Mhm.
exercise very early on in your, uh, especially if it's something you're unfamiliar with. Early on, you can sort of understand uh, what the accuracy is, or what the
Yeah.
commonalities are, because that's just going to help you in the long run, and that exercises your critical thinking skills.
Absolutely. And one thing an author can't be is one dimensional. So you have to be well rounded and know everything about not everything, but a little bit about all of the other stuff that goes into it. We have one Kia or Key in New Orleans. Oh, thank you, listening on 107.7 FM. Uh, is this going to be your only book? Ooh, good question.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say.
Ah, well, there's the answer. So no, that's great. But I guess I guess the better way to ask that is, you have interest in writing.
Oh,
Okay,
yes.
excellent.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
wonderful. So that's what we want to hear. Great job, Kia. Great job. Okay, so you have a human right in front of you. I want you to describe who absolutely needs to read this book.
The person who may have practiced witchcraft a long, long time ago, or the person who hmm, they feel kind of witchy. They might wear black on Wednesdays, and and the high priestess who runs a coven every Friday night and volunteers for the witches' night out at the local bookstore, and all of those different practitioners, I think, uh, are going to benefit from this book because it's going to not just review the foundations of craft as I
Hmm.
understand them in my traditions, but it's also going to give you, in part two, a whole body of rituals and spell work that can then be utilized or tailored just to build into your magical arsenal. There really is, I feel, something for everybody, no matter what level of witchcraft or occultism they may be. And if anything, I'm very proud of the books. Recommended reading lists and bibliography. So, if you don't like my book, check out, the other books and
Hmm.
articles and things that I like because they are referenced.
Oh, great job. Let me just clear this one question out of our queue here first before I let you promote. Can magic help protect us from unwanted visitors?
Define an unwanted visitor. Because
Um,
I would say yes, magic can protect us from unwanted visitors. I would say
I thought you already kind of said that when you practice your self-care, your magical self-care. Okay.
it's magical self-care, and then you can focus on, anything that may be an outside target. Okay, demons and ghosts. Yeah. Oh, demons and ghosts, easy. And you will get a lot of info about dealing with the ghosties. Demons are a little tricky though.
Yeah.
Only in the sense of, demons are demons, and demons are gonna demon.
Yeah.
I find actual demons way more understanding than you would expect. They have this weird. They're tricksters, right? And they can be dicks, and they are dicks, but
Mhm.
they are closer to the Earth sort of frequency, or the human frequency, being sublunar, than they are, let's say, angelic. Okay, angelics are
Okay.
very much more alien and further from human consciousness, which is why every time an angel in the Bible presents itself, it says, "Don't be afraid, be not afraid,"
Yeah.
because angels are fucking terrifying. There you can look at these descriptions. There's all these like 100 different eyes and stuff, but demons, they are very straightforward. They like these things, they don't like these things. They will tell you to, go off, or, come here, I have something for you. Most of the time though, when people think that they're dealing with demons, sometimes they're just dealing with shitty dead people.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're just dealing with poltergeist stuff, which is more to do with the living and our
Yeah. And how they're
manifestations.
projecting on reality.
Yeah, this is why I say it. Demons are gonna demon. It's how you define these things, and it's
Mhm.
really making sure we're using the same definitions for these things, because a lot of people might toss around the word demon, and that may just be an evil spirit, versus
Yeah.
like demon for us comes from daemon, which just means a intermediary spirit. So
Yep.
technically anything can be a daemon if it's relaying a message to another spirit. So definitions for that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then are you up for pre-order?
Yes, absolutely. You can pre-order directly from Crosscrow Books from their website. You can also pre-order on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and wherever else fine books are sold.
Excellent, excellent. So yeah, we have a couple minutes. Do your well, first off, before you go into your promo, and again, say that again for all the listeners, but I would be honored to have you back on in late 2024 when your book is ready to come out, and we'll do this. We'll run it back. How's that sound?
Hey, I'd be more than happy to, and it's an honor and a privilege. Yeah.
Well, thank you. But okay, the floor is yours. Go ahead and let everybody know the book and where it's at, and where they can pre-order.
All right. So you can go ahead and find your copy of Awakening the Witch Blood. And I'll go ahead, I'll just read the description, because why not? So,
Sure.
drawing on the myriad of beliefs from European witchcraft traditions, Nathan King has created an impressive guidebook combining mythology and folklore with operative rituals designed to enliven and quicken the metaphorical witch blood that courses through our veins. Learn the mysteries and often convoluted origins of the witch's power, and dive deep into practice. Learn the secrets of magical trance work, techniques to raise magical power, and a plethora of unique spoken charms and spells. Instructions for honoring the old witch gods, accompanying rituals of ancestor healing, and methods of including witch flight. And just because I have to toot my own horn, I do really want to read this one review. So this review is from
Yeah.
one of my favorite authors, and somebody I really, really respect and have a lot of admiration for, not just in occultism and within the craft, but just like as a human being.
Hmm.
But this is from, and I know I'm going to butcher his name, but it's Nicolas de Mateos Frisvold. Frisvold wrote the book on Exu and the cult of Pomagera, which are based out of Brazil, or Brazilian forms of
Okay.
magic and Cubanda, but he's also very well very well researched, and he has books on modern witchcraft as well. So he's the author of Craft of the Untamed, and this is what he wrote for my book. And
All right.
if this doesn't get people to buy, then I don't know what will. With Awakening the Witchblood, King brings to our attention toward two important elements for witchcraft, namely the witch and the witch blood. King works from the premise that the witch blood is an inherent power of all humanity due to the connection we all have with the source through the fallen angels' intervention. Yes, the fallen angels, because Awakening the Witchblood also considers the angelic origin of the witch blood. King perceives the blood as potentially ready to be awakened through practice and mystical experience, placing the witch as a practitioner of an art midway between being born and being made. From this premise, King casts new eyes on old sources like Gardner, Leland, Valiente, and Cochrane, and brings in the voices of Michael Howard and Andrew Chumley to aid in the new light he is casting upon witchcraft, the spiritual practice that works with paradox and dialectics, as he writes. In this journey, King introduces us to the people of Elfame, the Grigori, Aradia's legacy, and the usual suspects of moon, grove, and forest as he presents rituals to summon and for the purpose of dedication, along with charms to bind, curse, and cause. The power of herbs and the importance of trance and sabbatic night flight is a fine and important red thread flowing through Awakening the Witchblood in its ultimate quest, the pursuit of self and integrity, the great work itself, as it was inscribed on the Chthonic Temple of Apollo in Delphi. Know thyself.
Wow. Great review. Great review. That's a wonderful one. I love when fellow authors give, such in-depth reviews. It really helps. It really does help, but that's wonderful. That is all, everybody, for we want to thank, Nathan King here. Thank you so much. I can't wait to have you back on. We'll go more into, this was the 101 level. When you come back on, we'll go into the 201 level. How's that sound?
Awesome stuff.
Awesome. So we have been broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 on the Gulf Coast, 107.7 FM in New Orleans. We've also been airing live on Roku TV, and you can catch our archives there or subscribe to Beyond the Radars podcast on Spotify for past shows. Thank you all for tuning in, commenting, texting, and we will see you all next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.